nice to get out of London, and I'm sure you'd say, well, of course it is. This is particularly nice this weekend, because people are reeling. It was another city that voted in, I think even more enthusiastically than you did. People are wondering, what on earth is going to happen? That phrase that I heard earlier on to talk about people in much more desperate situations being a stranger in a foreign land. I don't know about you, but I thought, gosh, yes, I think I know a little bit more about that today than I did just a few days ago. I just don't know what country I'm in. I don't want to make any assumptions here that there are no enthusiastic Leave supporters in the room. I have a feeling they might be in the minority, but I'm not trying to be political or exclusive here, but there's something going on in our country which is really unsettling and really challenging. I'm guessing, I was incredibly impressed listening to you all getting down to business in the first hour or so of this conference, as though nothing had happened. I thought, gosh, what focus, what presence of mind you have. You're obviously people of action. I'm just an academic, I'm afraid, so I don't have that evil spirit of get up and go that you have. I'm just wondering about the deep implications of what's just happened in our country and where it leads us. I've had this talk in my diary for quite a few months, and I found it very difficult to know what I was going to say. And I realise now that when I took it on, when I very enthusiastically accepted to come and talk, it was just a date in the diary, 25th of June 2016, beautiful sunny summer's day, some chance. And I didn't notice that it was 2 days after the referendum, and that it certainly didn't really occur to me that we might be facing such a drastic change of scenery. And I'm just looking at you nodding at some of you. I'm realising I'm not the only one who's really quite disturbed, uncertain and unsettled. So I'm not going to present to you any great plan or fantastic ideas, because frankly, I think at this stage it's back to square one. I really do. I think we've got to build our country again from scratch. I think what we're going to need above all is deep, deep well springs of spirituality and faith. Because we're not just going to do it as well-meaning people, we're going to do it as the Christians, followers of Jesus Christ that we are. That means coming back to him. I don't know about you, but I really feel I need him desperately at the moment, just to give me a little bit of a sense of centeredness, of purpose, and peace in the middle of a really troubled world. We're living at a time of a crisis of hospitality, let me put it like that. What was the main thing that was on people's minds until Thursday? These dreadful immigrants who've come over here and are so threatening. Now, before we get too judgmental and say, gosh, how racist people are, how bigoted they are, let's face the fact that a lot of people do indeed feel that their world has changed and they never gave it permission for this. And, well, I don't want to be too judgmental of that. Let's just notice that and accept it and try and move on. There's a crisis of hospitality here. Hospitality to the refugee, they say, and I think it's a very good point to make, is the defining issue of our time. How we welcome people from places like Syria and Uganda and Iraq and all the other places that we've heard about this morning is the defining issue of our time. Much more important, frankly, than the exchange rates and the stock prices and all the other things that people are worrying about at the moment. I think it's so impressive and so wonderful that you've chosen to talk about that today, and obviously to act decisively together as the people of God, coming to the service of people who are desperate and need our help. It's a very wonderful thing. But let me ask this, do you have any idea what you're getting into? Do you know what you're doing? And I don't mean by that, do you have the skills necessary? Are you prepared? What I mean is, have you any idea of just how deep and important is the mystery of hospitality and welcome that you're getting into? Because it's an awful lot more serious than just offering very fine things that you're planning to do. Welcome and hospitality are right there at the very core of the gospel. They're right there at the very core. God is welcome, God is hospitality. And when we welcome the other, we are engaging with the deep mystery of God in a way that we rarely do in any other situation. It's right there at the centre of Jesus' message. And so quite simply what I want to do this morning is to break the bread of Scripture with you. Just to engage in quite a deep way, I hope, in the next half hour with a passage from the Gospel, which you all know very well, and it's a lovely story, and we often glide over the surface of it without getting deep into it. And I want us to go deep, because we're going to need that depth in the months and years to come. We've got to start this new phase of our life in prayer. So I want to draw you into prayer. Has anybody ever made an Ignatian retreat? Yeah, a good few. I bet many of you will have done that Ignatian exercise of imagining visually a gospel scene. And really what I'm trying to get you into today is doing that. I'm not going to put you in a trance state or hypnotize you or anything like that. It sounds as though some of you would quite like that, yes. Just to propose to you a little picture of who Jesus is and how we might be open to him. So let me try and sort out the technology for a moment. Could I ask you to sort out your technology? As I say, it's not going to be deep trance, but just for the sake of prayer, could you turn off any mobile phones that you might have? I tell you, there'd be an awful lot more of those in London than there are here, so it's nice to see. Let me just read the passage first, and then let's go over it a little bit in more detail. When one of the Pharisees invited Jesus to have dinner with him, Jesus went to the Pharisee's house and reclined at the table. A woman in that town who lived a sinful life learned that Jesus was eating at the Pharisee's house, so she came there with an alabaster jar of perfume. As she stood behind him at his feet, weeping, she began to wet his feet with her tears. Then she wiped them with her hair, kissed them, and poured perfume on them. When the Pharisee who had invited him saw this, he said to himself, if this man were a prophet, he'd know who's touching him, what kind of woman she is, but she is a sinner. Jesus answered him, Simon, I have something to tell you. Tell me, teacher, he said. Two people owed money to a certain moneylender. One owed him 500 denarii and the other 50. Neither of them had the money to pay him back, so he forgave the debts of both. Now, which of them will love him more? Simon replied, I suppose the one who had the bigger debt. Forgive me. You have judged correctly, Jesus said. Then he turned toward the woman and said to Simon, do you see this woman? I came into your house. You didn't give me any water for my feet, but she wet my feet with her tears and wiped them with her hair. You didn't give me a kiss, but this woman, from the time I entered, has not stopped kissing my feet. You didn't put oil on my head, but she's poured perfume on my feet. Therefore I tell you, her many sins have been forgiven, as her great love has shown. But whoever has been forgiven little, loves little. Then Jesus said to her, your sins are forgiven. The other guests began to say among themselves, who is this who even forgives sins? Jesus said to the woman, your faith has saved you. Go in peace. The Gospel of the Lord. I said we glide over the surface of that story. We all know it. We've all heard it dozens of times in church. It's a very difficult story to get into, but let's just try for a moment. We need to know a little bit about the culture of the time. Because the cultural assumptions that we make aren't quite the same as the ones operating in this story. We only actually discover what's really going on halfway through the story. Did you notice that? We're given the picture at the beginning. Jesus arrives at the house and goes and reclines at the table. Well, that's what we did. But what we weren't shown was the very opening scene of the encounter between Jesus and his Pharisee host. Now, if I come round to your house, I'm guessing that you have some fairly modest welcoming ritual. You would open the door and I guess say something like, oh, how nice to see you. You might shake my hand, or if this isn't London, so you might give me a hug, I don't know. I mean, it might be quite warm, but you sort of take my coat and offer me a cup of tea, wouldn't you? Yeah, of course you would. Imagine that you were in a shower and you just yelled out, "Oh, let yourself in." And then came down, put the television on and just watched that. What would I feel like? What would you be doing to me? You'd be humiliating me. I've had it done to me actually once in London. I remember taking communion around to a family and they just sat me down and carried on watching the television. And I thought, gosh, this is quite unusual. Even in London, that's a bit rude. And after 10 minutes, I just said, "It's very nice to see you, thank you, goodbye." That's obviously what they wanted me to do. It's very, very unusual to get a welcome like that. And yet that's what happens to Jesus here. Okay? The ancient ritual of an Oriental culture would be precisely what Jesus talks about in this slide. "You didn't give me any water for my feet." Well, the first thing you do for a guest, you wash their feet, taking the dust, the dirt from the road off their body. Just as Jesus washes the feet of his disciples at the Last Supper. That doesn't happen. Shocking. "You didn't give me a kiss." There's no handshake, no greeting. Extraordinary. This is shocking. And then the ritual of anointing your guest with oil. Seems a bit extravagant to us these days, but that was just what you did in those days. What do you think the atmosphere is like in this encounter? It's not just slightly rude. I mean, the atmosphere must have been electric with tension. Somebody has been invited to our house and has been accorded not even the basic rituals of welcome. Jesus is being humiliated. He's been invited so that he can be taken down a step or two by somebody who wants to assert his religious authority. That's what's happening here. Now, what would you do in that situation? I think I would leave quite quickly. I mean, I don't want to get into this kind of power game. Thank you very much. Got better things to do. But Jesus doesn't do that. This is where the opening of the story is suddenly quite shocking. Jesus arrives at the house and goes and sits down at the table. Well, I say, my goodness, that is quite a bold thing to do in such a situation. He doesn't get scared off or doesn't reject the person who's rejecting him so very, very rudely. He moves right into the centre, where the guest deserves to be, and reclines at table ready to eat. It's a fantastically provocative and interesting way to respond to a hellish situation. Why does he do that? I don't know is the simple answer, but maybe it's got something to do with dignity. I'm a guest, you invited me. You're jolly well going to do what you said you'd do. I'm not going to play your game. You know, he's not pushy, but he's going to carry on with what we said we'd do. It's very like Jesus. That's the Lord I know. And maybe he doesn't want to reject somebody even though they're rejecting him, and that's very much like his teaching, isn't it? Forgive your enemies. Sit down with even those people who wish you ill. Gosh, what a dramatic situation. Had you ever noticed quite how dramatic this is? It takes a bit of time to get into a gospel scene sometimes. Now do you see why the actions of the women are what they are? The woman who was a sinner. Let's just be upfront about the woman who was a sinner. The Gospel is very discreet about who she is, but she had a bad reputation. She's a prostitute, and you know that in biblical times there were two groups of people who were absolutely beyond the pale. They were the tax collectors and the prostitutes. They simply could never be received back into the community because of what they'd done. They were outcasts without any hope whatsoever of reconciliation with God's people. They were unclean. They had, in the most gross way, betrayed their people and made an alliance with the Roman occupier. That's what's going on here. So that's who she is. No hope of inclusion in the community, this woman. And yet, she hears that Jesus is dining at Simon's house. And so she turns up. Now again, Let's just get into what that little social situation means. Here is a woman who is an absolute outcast, dirty, unforgivable. Why is she drawn to come? What has she heard Jesus say that makes her want to turn up? Well, I suppose that he must have said something that gave her hope when no one else would. Must have been something in his preaching, in his message, that gave her the sense that maybe reconciliation was possible even for her. And she was so moved by that, she wanted to hear it again, to see him, just to be close. Extraordinary. What happens? Well, this is where it gets really interesting. She's turned up to the house of a man who fancies himself as a real holy virtuoso, somebody of utter purity. Here she is, a total outcast. I mean, I'd be hard put to describe the opposites as extreme as they might be in our kind of society. We're a little bit more egalitarian than they used to be. What would it be like? I'm not quite sure. Somebody totally unacceptable, and then somebody right up at the peak of society. So there they are. She must be feeling desperately intimidated, totally out of place, extremely vulnerable. Everybody is looking at her and judging her and condemning her. They certainly won't be talking to her. You don't talk to a woman anyway in public, certainly not someone like her. And then Jesus arrives, and what she witnesses is the humiliation of the man who has given her reason to hope. That's what's going on here. She sees the one who has opened up a future for her, humiliated in public by this Pharisee. And everybody must be desperately tense and anxious and worried about what's going on. Jesus has not been welcomed as he should have been, real affront in the culture of the time. And so what does she do? She offers him the welcome and the hospitality which everyone else has denied him. That's what she does. Extraordinary. What can she do? Can she wash his feet? Can she say, oh gosh, I'm going to find a bucket of water and a tap? And of course she can't. She's in somebody else's house. She can't suddenly find the resources that she needs, those symbolic elements that you need to welcome somebody. All she has, literally, are her tears. She's weeping, presumably because of a heady mixture of feelings that she must be going through at the moment. And with Jesus who's opened up my life, and yet look at him, look what's happening to him. Deep love going on here. Jesus is about to talk about love, and you can just see what he's getting at. Love in the middle of this dark, tense atmosphere. So she washes his feet with her tears. What's she going to dry them with? She can't ask for a towel. No one will speak to her. Nobody's going to help her. So of course, the only thing that she could wash is, or dry his feet with, is her hair. She didn't sit down and say, what wonderful poetic gestures I'm going to make, which artists for all time can capture in beautiful pictures. This is intensely practical. These are the gestures of a person of real poverty who've got nothing else to use. She's using her hair and her tears. That's all she's got. And then this perfume that she brought along, this gift, this precious gift of perfume. She anoints his feet. Now, that's pretty startling, isn't it? It's an extraordinary scene to be drawn into. What happens next? Well, this is where the power game gets really interesting. This is where it really gets difficult. Because if Jesus is going to capitalize on this situation, if he's going to use this embarrassing encounter with the Pharisee to preach, to teach, and to get his message across, surely he needs to show that the approach of this dirty woman, because that's how they will think of her, is something to be spurned. The only thing he could do in order to save his own dignity in such a situation as a good Jew is to brush her off. I don't like the gesture that you just made, it is not welcome. And of course he can't speak to her either because she's a woman as well as an outcast. That's what everybody will be expecting a holy man to do right now. That's what the Pharisee is assuming. He'll know what to do now because he'll know what sort of woman this is. And that's where Jesus' response is suddenly so incredibly generous and self-sacrificing. The cross is so desperately present here. It's so easy not to notice. So what he's going to do is reach out to her in her vulnerability. This incredible gesture that she's made, which has put her in a desperately vulnerable situation. She's broken all the taboos of her time. By the way, I didn't talk about a woman using her hair, just letting her hair down in public. That's certainly something she should do in the presence of her husband. This is an incredibly intimate act. She would have to uncover it, and she's really approaching him in this embarrassingly intimate way. What's he going to do? He doesn't reject her. He reaches out to her and puts his own life, his own reputation on the line. Your sins are forgiven. Gosh, he speaks directly to her. He recognizes her. He accepts her gesture. He meets her in this vulnerable, exposed situation she's put herself in, and accepts the consequences for himself, which are going to be exclusion, persecution, and rejection. The cross has already begun. It's not just some sad end to an otherwise beautiful story. The cross is already here. He's already accepting that his ministry, his way of meeting people where they are, is costly, constantly demanding of him, even his reputation. Wow. It's quite a story, isn't it? It's a bit deeper than just the rather nice little story of a woman who made some nice symbolic gestures. This is visceral. Does it speak to us about reaching out to a stranger in a society like this exciting New Britain that we've just made for ourselves, which is so inclined to reject the stranger? Does it say something about our own vulnerabilities we said about doing that? Does it say something about the identity of the one who we're welcoming? Maybe it's him. Can I just ask you for 10 minutes? Just sit comfortably. I'm going to show you a couple of images. You don't have to look at them, but they're just there to help focus your own prayer. And I just want to lead you into a very short, little bit of imaginative contemplation. There's the woman. Well, she's us. She's us as we seek to welcome somebody who nobody else is welcoming. And notice the spirit in which she comes to do that. It's not because she's a professional do-gooder who wants to be useful, wants everybody to admire her amazing altruistic spirit. She's not even a professional philanthropist. She's just an ordinary woman who has been deeply touched by the mercy of God as she's met it in Jesus Christ. And she's not somebody who thinks she's okay either. She's a sinner, and she knows that. And that's really important. Because we don't come to this work thinking, gosh, we are the good, heroic ones. Thank goodness we're good and the others are ashamed about all these awful people who voted the wrong way, or whatever. Like, no, it's not that at all. We're sinners. We've got to live out of the mercy that we've received as forgiven sinners. And let's not just come at this as individuals, but let's think about the way in which we represent our country, our culture too. A culture that has grown fat and rich at the expense of others through its history. It's not been shy about exploiting the poor, the weak. We have a culture at the moment that's showing more than its fair share of fear, resentfulness, anger, bitterness. I don't think a Christian can just say, that's all of them, and I'm good and pure and holy. That's us too. And we hold that as we come to this wonderful work of receiving, welcoming, hospitality to the other, to the stranger. Just like to close your eyes and imagine that woman. Just to us to be a little bit like her. Because she's brave. She's courageous. She has immense dignity herself. And that's because Jesus has given it to her. And she doesn't mind making a gesture and misrepresented. Because of him, because of what he's done for her. And she's resourceful, she has nothing, but everything she has is put into this incredible gesture of welcome. If only we could show love like that. We can if we know that we are forgiven, held by Christ's mercy. There's another character, if you'd like to look at him now. Simon the Pharisee. Well, we know him very well because we're also Simon in some time, sometimes in some places. But let's not get too close to him right now. Simon doesn't think of himself as a bad person. In many ways, he's not a bad person. He's trying to do his best. He thinks he knows what it means to be faithful to God. It means holding himself apart from Jesus, whose ideas he thinks are dangerous. Certainly apart from that woman, who represents everything that he despises. And also apart from ordinary Jews who, well, they just don't have the education and the religious refinement that he does, observing the law to the nth degree. So he's a holy man in some ways, you might say. He certainly thinks that he's on the path to holiness. But he can't reach out. I guess the fact that he invited Jesus means at some level something in him wants to reach out in his twisted way, but he just can't do it because he's holding himself aloof from everything. I don't want us to go around labeling other people as Pharisees, but perhaps we can get into the spirit of exclusion, of self-righteousness, of entitlement, that is very much abroad in our culture at the moment. These people are just want to come for our benefits. Why don't they go back to their own country? Leave us alone. We've worked hard for all we have here, we don't deserve it. You've heard the voices. It's just possible part of you, little voice inside, thinks these things sometimes too. Just look at that one. Just notice the way in which Simon cuts himself off from what he really wants because of his inability to welcome. Because he doesn't even know that that's what God asks of him, to welcome the other. say that when we welcome the stranger, we welcome Jesus. Maybe the parable, the story we just looked at, tells us a little bit about why that's the case. It's not just because foreigners are terribly interesting, and they've got lovely stories, and it's nice to have them round and sharing exotic cuisine. All that language about celebrating difference and all that stuff, it's okay, but honestly it's not the heart of what we're about. The point is that it's very costly to take the risk of welcoming the stranger. It's what you might call a full-time activity. It demands everything of us, just as it demanded everything of the woman. Put yourself on the line, and when you do that, you really open yourself to Jesus. And he will meet you there. He will not abandon you. He will not reject you. He will not say, what a stupid thing to do. He doesn't turn away from people who reach out like that. He always meets them, and it's costly to him too. And that's where we meet the Lord. A costly exchange. Two people reaching out to each other because they're both excluded and they're both vulnerable. They stand in solidarity together. That's why welcoming the stranger is always welcoming Jesus Christ. Just notice how Jesus doesn't tell Simon that he's going to hell, and that God doesn't love him because of his nasty attitude. He's pretty rough with Simon. I mean, have you ever criticized someone's hospitality? It's incredible, isn't it? I assume that it doesn't happen in Liverpool. It certainly doesn't happen down south. Whenever I'm invited out to dinner, the meal is always wonderful. You know what I mean? You would never say to your host, sorry, the soup wasn't up to much. Or the chicken wasn't properly cooked. You always praise the hospitality. And it's not a lie, is it? It's just what we do. It's important. Well, Jesus doesn't. He says, your hospitality is being outrageous. You didn't wash my feet. You didn't embrace me. You didn't anoint me. So Jesus is rough with Simon. He tells the truth in a way that you and I would never ever get away with. So I don't recommend you try this at home or anybody else's home. Jesus has a capacity to tell the truth. Of course, in doing so, he signs his own death warrant, because you humiliate your host in public when you tell truth like that. Well, I mean, that's it. You are out, just like the woman was. So we've got to be tough in our own way, tough like Jesus was tough, because people are going to laugh at us, they're going to call us do-gooders, and they're going to call us politically irresponsible, all sorts of other nasty names. Bring it on, that's fine. But Jesus will meet us there. We've got to be tough like Jesus is tough. But we don't get judgmental. Jesus doesn't condemn Simon, he teaches him. He makes space for him to change. Maybe Pharisees change. It's not to be excluded as a possibility. It does happen. Nicodemus, do you remember him? Pharisees change. They don't all change, but some of them do. It's really important that Jesus' work is done in that spirit. Bold truth-telling, but not judgmental condemnation. Just creating space for people to learn and to grow and to change. Just close your eyes for one last minute.